Hi everyone, welcome to the second part of the building the Rooikat Take-down Recurve bow by EBC bows. I hope you enjoyed the first video. If you haven't watched it yet, go back and look for part 1. Then everything will follow in chronological order. So this part we are going to be sculpting the riser into the required shape that we want. So this is the part I enjoy the most about bow making, actually taking a rectangular block of wood that I glue together and shaping it into a bow. So this for me is the ultimate part of building the bow. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them in the comment section. I'll check in every now and then to answer those, and I hope you enjoy the video. Let me know what you think. Just a footnote, I realized when editing the videos that I use the word guys a lot. Please girls, I don't exclude you from this. To me, guys is a unisex term, so when I refer to guys, please feel included, ladies. I'm not saying that ladies cannot build bows, so please don't take it the wrong way. Enjoy the video and let me know what you think, guys. Cheers. Hi guys, okay, we're back and we're going to start shaping the riser. So on the darker woods I like to use a bit of masking tape when marking out the riser, simply because the pencil marks don't show very nicely on the dark wood, and you don't want to be cutting the riser wrong after you've done so much to get it to this point. There we go. There's a rough shape, and we can now cut it out and start the shaping process. But before I do that, I like to just draw in where the shelf is going to be. That is actually our line where the top part of the shelf is going to be. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut the top part of the shape out, that line. And then before I cut the bottom, I'm going to cut the shelf and shape it into the shape that I want the shelf to be. There we've got the top part cut out, and now I will just draw in the shelf and then just cut that out as well. This is going to be a right-handed person's bow, so the shelf will come on the left-hand side of the riser. I'm just going to draw in the shelf before I start cutting. Again, apply tape to the top part so that I can draw in the shelf and see it clearly before I start cutting it. Now for that I use my adjustable square, and we want it just under 20 mil. So there I've got the rough shape of the shelf, and now I can start cutting it. out. And there's our basic shape of the shelf. So now we can cut the rest of the bottom of the bow. For that, I just stick this little piece back in its place so that I've still got my lines. And that is it, our basic shape. And now we can start actually shaping the riser to the required form that we want it in. Okay, so I've taken the tape off the riser, and there we can see that nice grain of the panga coming through on the wood. Now I'm going to make sure that the beds for the limbs are absolutely flat and at a square angle to the rest of the riser. Now again, I'm going to use my chalk trick to make sure that it's flat and that it doesn't need some sanding in some space. Excuse my homemade horizontal sander, but it does the job. My hobby press that I use as a drive is just a bit weak to start it off, so I have to give it a push start to get it going. You can see there's a little mark there and a little bit here. And then this needs quite a bit of sanding to get that nice and flat. So that one is nice and flat. And there we go. Both limb beds are nice and flat. And square. So now we can go on to the next step, which would be to drill the pilot holes for the brass inserts that I put in for the limb bolts. Okay, the next step will be to drill the pilot holes for the brass inserts that I'm going to use, that my limb bolts screw into. I made myself a little jig for this, just to make my life easier. That's also why I do this part before I start to actually shape the riser, because then everything still fits nice and tight. It's exactly 40 mils, and I've set the depth of my drill so that it doesn't go too deep. do the same on the other side. And there we go, pilot holes drilled. Okay, now we can continue to the shaping process, but that'll have to be for another day. We're about to have load shedding. For those of you that live in South Africa, you'll understand what I mean. For those of you in the other countries, in South Africa they turn our power off for 2 to 4 hours at a time on a schedule, and then basically make turns between different areas to have power due to our power supplier not being able to meet the demand. So that's part of the process in South Africa. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay, so this next part of the process, I've now flattened the limb beds, and now I'm going to start shaping the riser. And this is probably the part of bow building that I enjoy the most. Really just sculpting the riser out of the block of wood that we glued together. So here goes. I use two tools to shape the riser. The one is the belt sander that you just saw me using, and the other is a baby grinder with a flat disc on that I then use to sculpt with. Now the baby grinder is a very dusty process, so I'll be putting on my dust mask for this process. So I'll be alternating between the baby grinder and the sander. I'm not going to show every little moment of it, as it's a lot of boring watching me grind stuff away. But this is where we are now. You can see it's starting to take a nice shape. And now I'm headed back to the sander. So see you again soon. So I've done the basic shaping now. And now I'm just going to make sure that the shelf is nice and smooth and rounded where the cut was made. That strengthens your bow to not have a sharp edge there. Okay, so the next step would be to actually start the sanding process with a orbital sander. This one both vibrates and rotates, which makes it quite an efficient little sander. 80 grit sandpaper. So we can see that it's starting to take shape nicely. We're doing a little bit more sanding with the 80 grit, and then I'll switch to a 150 grit to start making it smoother and smoother up to the finished product. So as we go into the finer and finer grits, we start to see how that beautiful grain that gave Panga Panga, which is also known as partridge wood, its name. You can see that beautiful, looks like a partridge feather coming out of the timber as we start to sand it smooth. Really beautiful. So after I've sanded it with the 150 grit, I like to put on some sanding sealer, and because Panga Panga is quite a porous wood, the sanding sealer just helps to give you a smoother finish. We can also see now how the curly maple, the curly in the curly maple is starting to show on the white accent line now that it's getting smoother. The sanding seal also gives us a nice idea of what the actual color of the bow is going to be once it's finished, once it's sealed. See that nice rich dark color with the white accent line, starts to look really nice. The sanding seal also helps us in the sense that it shows the lines that didn't quite sand out, you know, your saw cuts and your with the baby grinder that's got a very aggressive disc on it. There's a little bit of marks that still needs to be polished out. I'll allow it some time to dry and see you in a couple of minutes. So the sanding sealer is dried nicely, and now I'm going to use a very fine grid, a 320 grid, to do the final polishing. So you saw me switching out sandpapers there. I found some, as I polished the timber, I found some sanding marks from the belt sander, and I just used a bit more aggressive, the 150 again, to just take those sanding marks out. And the final piece would be to hand polish it with a, I like to use these sponge sandpaper. It's basically just a sponge with sandpaper stuck around it, and that actually conforms nicely around the curves of the bow, so it doesn't cause any aggressive sanding marks when polishing the bow. Now personally, I don't like to sand my limb seats too smooth. It just makes for a better grip when they're a little bit rougher, so I just clean them up nicely and leave them a little bit rougher. And that's it. The riser is all but done. The final sanding will take place once I've fitted the limbs, to just make sure that everything aligns nicely. But yeah, that is it. So that is it for part 2, the sculpting of the riser. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. You'll see that I work with very rudimentary tools, and that just shows that you don't need the most expensive tools out there to build a bow. So I hope this will inspire you to build bows yourself, and let me know how it goes. And if there's any questions, as I said in the intro, please feel free to comment or to contact me on the contact details that is on the video. Hope to hear from you guys, and look out for part 3 of the making of the Rooikat bow, which will be the making of the limbs. There will be quite a bit of interesting and useful facts in that video as well. So I'll be editing that soon and having it go live on YouTube. So look forward to seeing you guys in part 3 as well. Cheers.